The great council chamber of the Galactic Assembly buzzed with the usual sounds of 1,000 different voices. Translators hummed as they converted speech from one alien language to another. The air recyclers worked hard to keep the atmosphere breathable for dozens of different species. Ambassador Zethkar adjusted his breathing apparatus and checked the schedule on his datapad. The humans were supposed to present their trade proposal today. Their delegation always arrived early, usually chatting with other ambassadors before the session began. But today their seats sat empty. The Kythera delegate noticed too. Her 4 eyes turned toward the empty human section. Where are they? She clicked in her native tongue, the translator turning it into standard galactic speech. Zethkar looked around the chamber. In 200 years of galactic cooperation, the humans had never missed a session. They were always eager to participate, always ready with new ideas or solutions to problems that had stumped other species for decades. The session began without them. The assembly leader, a tall Nexari with silver skin, called for the human trade proposal. Silence filled the chamber. The leader tried again, this time sending a direct communication to the human delegation's quarters. No response. The Veltar security chief stood up, his scales shifting color to show concern. I will check their quarters personally, he announced. The chamber watched as he left, his heavy footsteps echoing in the sudden quiet. 20 minutes later, he returned. His scales had turned dark blue, the color of deep worry. The quarters are empty, he reported. All personal items are gone. The beds were never slept in. There are no signs of struggle or forced departure. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The assembly leader called for an immediate recess. Within an hour, communication attempts were being made to every human colony, station, and ship in known space. The results were the same everywhere. Empty Captain Thrix commanded a Nexari merchant vessel that had been heading to the human colony of New Geneva. He had arrived to find the space docks functioning perfectly, but no humans anywhere. The automated system still worked. The plants in the gardens were watered and healthy. Fresh food sat in refrigerators, but every single human was gone. It's like they just walked away, Thrix reported to his superiors. Everything is in perfect order. The colony's defense systems are still running. The fusion reactors are working fine, but there's not a single human anywhere. Similar reports came from across the galaxy. Human military bases with weapons still armed but no soldiers. Research stations with experiments still running but no scientists. Trading posts with goods ready for sale but no merchants. Dr. Yillian Morse, a Centauri scientist who had worked closely with human researchers for 30 years, stared at her communication console in disbelief. She had been expecting a call from her human colleague, Dr. Martinez, about their joint project studying ancient stellar formations. Instead, she received an automated message. This facility is temporarily closed. All scheduled meetings and projects have been suspended. Thank you for your cooperation. The message was polite and professional, just like the humans always were, but it told her nothing about where they had gone or why they had left. Emergency sessions were called on every major world. The Hegemony Council met on their fortress world of Zerion. The Free Traders Assembly gathered on the commercial hub of Nexus Prime. Even the mysterious architects, who rarely involved themselves in galactic politics, sent observers to monitor the situation. What worried everyone most was not just that the humans were gone, but how they had left. Every species in the galaxy had some kind of early warning system for their people. If the Kythera faced a threat, they would send messages to all their colonies. If the Veltar needed to evacuate, they would coordinate with their allies. The humans had done none of this. They had simply vanished, leaving behind a galaxy that had grown dependent on their presence in ways no one had fully realized. The human banking system still functioned, but without human oversight, some of the more complex financial instruments began to fail. Trade routes that had been secured by human peacekeeping forces suddenly became dangerous, as pirates realized there would be no human response to their attacks. Worst of all, the technological systems that humans had helped develop across the galaxy began to show signs of decay. The humans had always been generous with their knowledge, sharing new discoveries and improvements with other species. But now, without human maintenance and upgrades, these systems started to break down. The quantum communication network that connected half the galaxy had been designed by human engineers working with Nexari technicians. As components failed and needed replacement, the Nexari found they didn't fully understand how the human modifications worked. The network began to slow, then fail sector by sector. Ambassador Zethkar found himself in charge of the investigation committee. He had known humans for most of his long life and considered many of them friends. The idea that they would abandon everything without explanation seemed impossible. They must have had a reason, he told the committee during their first meeting. Humans don't act without careful thought. They're planners. They think ahead. The Kithara representative disagreed. Perhaps they faced some threat we don't know about. Something that made them run. Then why didn't they ask for help? Demanded the Veltar delegate. The humans have allies throughout the galaxy. If they were in danger, we would have assisted them. The committee reviewed every communication from human space in the months before the disappearance. They found normal trade messages, scientific reports, and diplomatic correspondence. Nothing suggested any kind of crisis or emergency. What they did find, however, were subtle changes in human behavior over the past year. Humans had been quietly ending long-term contracts. They had been selling off assets and withdrawing investments. Trade agreements that should have been renewed automatically had been allowed to expire. Dr. Morse presented her findings to the committee. "I've been analyzing human economic activity for the past 2 years," she said, her tentacles writhing with agitation. The patterns suggest careful preparation. They weren't fleeing from something sudden. They were planning to leave, but planning for how long? Zethkar asked. Based on the data, I estimate they began preparing at least 18 months ago, maybe longer. The chamber fell silent. 18 months of secret preparation meant this wasn't a response to any recent crisis. The humans had decided to leave, and they had taken great care to do it without anyone noticing their plans. The investigation continued for weeks, but answers remained elusive. The humans had covered their tracks well. They had left no clues about where they had gone or why they had left. The galaxy found itself facing a reality it had never considered. A future without humanity. Trade networks began to collapse as species that had relied on human intermediaries found themselves unable to communicate effectively with each other. Scientific research slowed as collaborative projects lost their human partners. Even the arts suffered, as human creativity had inspired and influenced countless alien cultures. The galaxy had not realized how much it had come to depend on the humans until they were gone. Now, as systems failed and conflicts reignited without human mediation, the other species began to understand what they had lost. In the empty council chamber, Zethkar sat alone at his desk, staring at the vacant human seats. Somewhere out there, humanity continued to exist, but for the first time in 2 centuries, they were no longer part of galactic civilization. The question that haunted everyone was simple. Why? 3 months had passed since the humans disappeared, and the galaxy was falling apart. The Kithara-Veltar conflict had started small, like most wars do. A disagreement over mining rights in the Sigma sector. Normally, human mediators would have stepped in within days, bringing both sides to a neutral station for talks. The humans had a gift for finding solutions that worked for everyone, but there were no human mediators anymore. Commander, Velthak watched from the bridge of his warship as Kithara fighters attacked the disputed mining platform. His scales shifted to deep red, the color of battle rage. Without human peacekeepers to maintain order, old hatreds had quickly resurfaced. Fire at will, he ordered his crew. The war that humans had prevented for decades began with the flash of plasma cannons. Similar conflicts erupted across the galaxy. The free traders found their shipping lanes under constant attack from pirates. The human patrol ships that had protected merchant vessels were gone, and no other species had been able to organize an effective replacement. Captain Thrix ducked as another explosion rocked his merchant ship. 3 pirate vessels had cornered him near the Nexus shipping lanes. His cargo hold was full of medical supplies desperately needed on the plague-stricken world of Kepler-7. "This is merchant vessel Star Dancer," he broadcast on the emergency frequency. "I'm carrying medical supplies for plague victims. Please, these people will die without these medicines." The pirate captain's voice crackled back through the communicator. "Not my problem, merchant. Surrender your cargo or be destroyed." In the past, Thrix would have called for human peacekeepers. They would have arrived within hours, driving off the pirates and ensuring safe passage for humanitarian supplies. Now, He had no choice but to surrender his cargo and watch as desperately needed medicines disappeared into the black market. Dr. Yillian Morse stared at her laboratory equipment in frustration. Her research on stellar formation had ground to a complete halt. The project required massive computational power that could only be provided by the quantum processing networks the humans had helped design. But the networks were failing. Computer, run Stellar Evolution Simulation 779, she commanded. Unable to comply, the computer responded. Quantum processing network offline. Estimated repair time unknown. She slammed her tentacle against the desk. Without the human-designed quantum processors, her research would take hundreds of years instead of months. The humans hadn't just taken their people when they left. They had taken the galaxy's technological future. The banking crisis hit next. Human financial institutions had become central to galactic commerce over the past century. Their complex economic models and risk assessment systems had prevented market crashes and enabled unprecedented prosperity. Now, those systems were failing one by one. Traitor. Zenth watched in horror as his life savings vanished from his account. The automated trading system he had trusted with his investments had malfunctioned, selling all his holdings at massive losses. The human programmers who had designed the system's safeguards were gone, and no one else understood how to fix it. How is this possible? He demanded of the Nexari bank manager. These systems were supposed to be stable. The bank manager's silver skin had turned pale with stress. The human safety protocols require manual verification for large transactions. Without human operators, the system defaults to automatic mode. We've lost control of 17% of our trading algorithms. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out. Life savings disappeared, trade agreements collapsed, and entire economies teetered on the edge of collapse. But the worst was yet to come. Admiral Kythex stood in the command center of the hegemony's most powerful warship, staring at diagnostic reports that made no sense. The ship's weapon systems were failing, but not from battle damage or normal wear. Explain this to me again, he demanded of his chief engineer. The engineer's four arms gestured helplessly at the data displays. The humans upgraded our weapon systems 5 years ago. They improved the targeting computers and increased our firepower by 30%. But now the systems are degrading. Degrading how? The targeting accuracy has dropped by 15% in the past month. The energy output is fluctuating. We've had 3 complete weapon failures this week. Admiral Kythex felt cold fear creep through his body. Are we under attack? Is this sabotage? No, sir. It appears to be planned obsolescence. The human upgrades require regular maintenance using techniques and materials that only humans possess. Without that maintenance, the systems slowly fail. The Admiral stared at the data in disbelief. The humans had made the hegemony's military dependent on their technology, and now that technology was abandoning them just as surely as the humans themselves had. Dr. Morse found herself at the center of a growing investigation. Her work analyzing human economic patterns had revealed something disturbing. The humans hadn't just planned their departure. They had been preparing the galaxy for it. Look at these patent filings, she told the emergency committee that had formed to address the crisis. The humans filed thousands of new patents in the year before they left. But they also allowed many existing patents to expire. Ambassador Zethkar leaned forward, his breathing apparatus hissing. What's the pattern? They kept patents for basic essential technologies, things like water purification, basic medical equipment, simple communication devices. But they let expire all the patents for advanced systems, military hardware, quantum computing, faster-than-light communication networks. The committee members looked at each other with growing alarm. They were protecting basic humanitarian technology while ensuring that advanced military and economic systems would eventually fail without their support, Dr. Morse continued. This wasn't abandonment. This was calculated withdrawal. The Veltar security chief spoke up, his voice grim. They were forcing us to become dependent on them, then leaving us helpless when they departed. No, Dr. Morse said quietly. I think they were doing something else entirely. They were leveling the playing field. She brought up a new display showing galactic power structures over the past century. Before humans arrived, the galaxy was dominated by a few powerful species. The hegemony controlled through military might. The Nexari controlled through economic manipulation. The older species maintained power by controlling access to advanced technology. The display showed how human innovations had gradually eroded these power structures. Their freely shared technology had allowed smaller species to compete with larger ones. Their economic systems had prevented the kind of monopolistic control that had existed before. Now that their advanced systems are failing, we're all being reduced to the same technological level, Dr. Morse explained. The hegemony can't maintain their military advantage without human weapons upgrades. The Nixari can't control trade without human economic algorithms. The older species can't hoard technology because the humans made sure basic innovations were freely available. Ambassador Zeth Kar realized the implications. They were never trying to control us. They were trying to free us from each other. But why leave? Asked the Cathera delegate. If their goal was galactic equality, why not stay and see it through? Dr. Morse was quiet for a long moment. I think, she said finally, they discovered something that made staying impossible. Something that threatened not just them, but everything they had worked to achieve. The committee sat in silence, each member contemplating what could have been serious enough to make humanity abandon 2 centuries of careful work. Whatever it was, the humans had chosen to continue their mission from somewhere else, leaving the galaxy to face its future without them. As the weeks passed and the crisis deepened, one thing became clear. The humans had not simply vanished. They had orchestrated the most complex social engineering project in galactic history, reshaping the balance of power throughout known space. The question now was whether the other species could build a better galaxy from the pieces humanity had left behind, or whether everything would collapse into chaos and war. The answer would determine the fate of trillions of beings across 1,000 worlds. Captain Vexhai had been exploring the Outer Rim for 20 years, but she had never seen anything like this. Her Veltar survey ship, Deepseeker, had been mapping unknown sectors when her sensors detected something impossible. Energy readings that dwarfed entire star systems were coming from a region of space that should have been empty. Navigator, confirm our position, she ordered, her scales shifting to yellow with excitement. Confirmed, Captain. We are in Sector 7749 Gamma, approximately 40,000 light-years beyond the Outer Rim territories. This region was marked as empty space in all previous surveys. Captain Vexhai stared at her display screen. The energy signatures were massive, organized, and clearly artificial. Take us to maximum sensor range. I want to know what's out there. As her ship approached, the sensors began to resolve individual objects. What they found defied understanding. A structure floated in the darkness of space larger than most moons. Its surface was covered with millions of lights, creating patterns that looked almost like a vast city. Around it, a fleet of ships stretched as far as her sensors could reach. Not hundreds of ships or even thousands. Millions. Captain, her science officer whispered, the energy readings suggest industrial activity on a scale I've never seen. This isn't just a station or a colony. This is a manufacturing center capable of building entire fleets. Captain Vexhai felt her breath catch in her throat. Can you identify the design of the ships? The science officer worked at his console for several minutes before looking up, with confusion and fear. The ships are human-designed, Captain, but they're unlike any human vessels we've ever seen. They're larger, more advanced, and they're armed with weapons that don't match any technology in our databases. Before the captain could respond, her communication officer spoke up. Captain, we're being scanned. Very sophisticated sensors, far more advanced than anything in known space. Raise shields. Prepare to withdraw to safe distance. Too late, Captain. They've detected us. The main screen flickered and a message appeared. It was in perfect Veltar script, despite coming from what appeared to be human space. Veltar vessel Deepseeker. You are directed to proceed to coordinates 7749-3334.89.112 for immediate conference. Comply within the next 6 hours. This is not a request. Captain Vexhai felt her scales turn black with fear. The coordinates were for a location 3 light hours away. Even at maximum speed, the journey would take her ship most of the allocated time. Set course for the coordinates, she ordered, and send an immediate message to Veltar Command. Tell them what we've found. The journey to the meeting point took 5 hours and 40 minutes. Captain Vexhai spent the time studying every piece of data her sensors had collected about the human installation. The more she learned, the more frightened she became. The structure wasn't just large. It was impossibly complex. Her sensors detected manufacturing facilities that could build starships in hours instead of months. Power generation systems that output more energy than entire solar systems. defensive arrays that could destroy fleets before they got within weapon range. Worst of all, the installation wasn't new. Based on the energy patterns and the size of the construction, her science officer estimated it had been under development for at least 50 years, possibly longer. How is this possible? She asked her crew. 50 years ago, human technology was barely equal to ours. How could they have built something like this without anyone knowing? Her science officer had no answer. None of them did. At the designated coordinates, they waited. The space around them appeared empty. But Captain Vexahai's instruments detected powerful scanning beams examining every inch of her ship. They were being studied with a thoroughness that made her uncomfortable. Then, without warning, a ship appeared. It materialized from nothing, as if it had been invisible until that moment. The design was clearly human, but unlike any human vessel Captain Vexhai had ever seen. Where human ships had always been functional and practical, this one was beautiful in a way that seemed almost alive. Its hull curved and flowed like water, and energy patterns danced across its surface. "Captain," her science officer reported, his voice shaking, "that ship is putting out more power than our entire battle fleet. Its weapon systems alone could destroy a planet." A communication request came through. Captain Vexhai accepted it, and her main screen filled with the image of a human. But this human was different from those the galaxy had known. She appeared to be in her middle years, with gray hair and lines around her eyes, but those eyes held something that made Captain Vexhai's scales crawl. They were cold, calculating, and completely without mercy. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Defense Initiative," the woman said. Her voice was calm and professional, but there was something underneath it that suggested vast, controlled power. "You have discovered something that was not meant to be found for another 6 months." Captain Vexhai found her voice. "Admiral, I am Captain Vexhai of the Veltar Exploration Service. We were conducting routine surveys when we detected your installation. We mean no harm." Admiral Chen smiled, but it was not a warm expression. "Captain, your people have always been honorable in their dealings with humanity. For that reason, you will be allowed to return to your territory safely. But first you must understand what you have seen." The Admiral gestured, and the screen split to show images of the massive human installation. This facility represents 53 years of continuous construction. It has been built in absolute secrecy by humans who removed themselves from galactic society for that specific purpose. "But why?" Captain Vexhai asked. "Why build such a thing in secret? Why abandon galactic civilization?" Admiral Chen's expression hardened. "Because we discovered that galactic civilization was never meant to be free. We learned that for millions of years, the development of younger species has been carefully controlled by forces that most of the galaxy doesn't even know exist." She brought up new images on the screen. Ancient structures hidden in deep space, energy patterns that suggested intelligence far older than any known civilization, and data streams that connected thousands of seemingly independent events across galactic history. "We call them the Architects," Admiral Chen continued. "They are beings who transcended physical form eons ago, but who have never stopped trying to control the development of younger species. They have been manipulating galactic civilization since before the first Veltar learned to build ships." Captain Vexhai felt as if the deck was shifting under her feet. "That's impossible. The galactic community developed naturally over millions of years." "Did it?" Admiral Chen asked. "Did your people really discover faster than light travel on their own? Or did you find the principles in ancient ruins just like every other species? Did trade networks really develop organically? Or were they guided into existence by carefully placed artifacts and timely technological discoveries?" The captain thought about Veltar history. Their great breakthrough in space travel had indeed come from studying ancient ruins. Most of their advanced technology was based on principles found in archaeological sites across their territory. "You're saying our entire civilization was guided by these architects?" "I'm saying your civilization was limited by them," Admiral Chen replied. "The architects don't want to destroy younger species. They want to control them. They guide technological development just enough to create useful civilizations, but never enough to threaten their own superiority." Admiral Chen's image leaned forward. "Humanity was scheduled for adjustment, Captain. We were becoming too innovative, too unpredictable. The architects decided we needed to be reduced to a client species, our expansion limited, our potential capped forever. But you escaped that fate." "We rejected it," Admiral Chen said. and her voice carried a tone that made Captain Vexai's scales turn white with fear. "We chose to disappear from galactic civilization before they could implement their adjustment. We spent 50 years building the tools we needed to deal with them permanently." The screen changed again, showing images of the human fleet, ships beyond number, each one radiating power that dwarfed anything in known space. "We are returning to known space, Captain. Not to reclaim our place in galactic civilization, but to end the age of hidden masters. The architect's time is over." Captain Vexai found herself trembling. "What does that mean for the rest of us?" Admiral Chen's smile returned, but this time it held something that might have been warmth. "It means you'll finally be free to become what you were meant to be, instead of what you were allowed to become." The communication ended, and the human ship vanished as suddenly as it had appeared. Captain Vexai sat in her command chair, staring at empty space, trying to process what she had learned. Humanity hadn't abandoned the galaxy. They had been preparing to liberate it from forces so ancient and powerful that most species didn't even know they existed. As her ship began the long journey back to Veltar space, Captain Vexai wondered what the galaxy would look like when the humans finished their work. She also wondered how many civilizations would survive the coming war between humanity and the beings who had controlled galactic development since the dawn of time. One thing was certain. The age of hidden manipulation was about to end, and the age of human judgment was about to begin. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been going for 3 days straight. Captain Vexai's report had changed everything. Ambassador Zethkar stood before the assembled delegates, his breathing apparatus working overtime as stress affected his respiratory system. If what Captain Vexai discovered is true, then everything we know about our history is false. The chamber erupted in dozens of different languages. Translators struggled to keep up with the chaos of voices. The Cathara delegation was clicking rapidly among themselves. The Nixari representatives had turned pale silver with shock. Even the normally calm Centauri were agitated, their tentacles writhing with distress. Dr. Yillian Morse had spent the past week analyzing every piece of archaeological data in the galactic databases. What she found made her sick with understanding. "The evidence is overwhelming," she announced to the chamber. "Every major technological breakthrough in recorded history follows the same pattern. Archaeological discoveries of ancient artifacts, followed by rapid advancement, followed by mysterious barriers that prevent further progress." She brought up displays showing technological development across dozens of species. The patterns were identical. Each civilization would find ruins containing just enough advanced technology to bootstrap their development to a specific level. Then somehow further advancement would become mysteriously difficult. The Veltar found faster-than-light drive principles in ruins on their 4th planet. The Cathara discovered advanced metallurgy in ancient mines. The Nixari learned quantum manipulation from artifacts in their asteroid belt. Every species tells the same story. The hegemony representative, a massive creature with armored hides, spoke with a voice like grinding stone. "Are you suggesting our entire civilization is artificial?" "Not artificial," Dr. Morse replied. "Guided, controlled, limited." She brought up new data. "I've been analyzing the technological barriers that have prevented advancement beyond certain levels. They're not natural limits. They're engineered obstacles designed to keep civilizations at specific development stages." The chamber fell silent. The implications were staggering. Ambassador Zethkar found his voice first. "But why? What would be the purpose of such control?" Before Dr. Morse could answer, every display screen in the chamber went dark. Then slowly a new image appeared. It was a star map, but unlike any they had seen before. It showed not just the known galaxy, but structures and patterns that extended far beyond explored space. A voice spoke from the chamber's speakers. It was Admiral Chen, but her image did not appear, only her voice calm and cold. "Because, Ambassador Zethkar, a galaxy full of truly free and advanced civilizations would be uncontrollable. And the architects require control above all else." Security forces rushed into the chamber, but there was nothing for them to secure. The transmission was coming from everywhere and nowhere. "You are about to meet your masters," Admiral Chen continued. "The beings who have shaped your civilizations for millions of years. They prefer to remain hidden, but circumstances now require direct intervention." The star map on the screens began to change. Points of light appeared throughout the galaxy. thousands of them, each one representing something vast and ancient. These are architect installations, the Admiral's voice explained. Monitoring stations, control nodes, and manipulation centers. They have been hidden in your space for longer than your species have existed. Ambassador Zethkar felt his legs give out. He collapsed into his chair, staring at the display. There were 3 architect installations in Veltar space alone, including one inside their home solar system. The architects are energy beings, Admiral Chen continued. They transcended physical form approximately 4 million years ago. But transcendence did not satisfy them. They decided that all younger species should be guided, controlled, and prevented from achieving true independence. The display changed again, showing images that hurt to look at. Shapes that bent space around them, patterns of energy that seemed to extend into dimensions the eye couldn't follow. They are beautiful, in their way, and they are absolutely convinced that what they do is for the good of the galaxy. They see themselves as gardeners, and you as plants to be carefully tended. A new voice filled the chamber. It was unlike anything the delegates had ever heard. It seemed to come from inside their heads rather than through their ears, and it carried harmonics that resonated in their bones. Young species do not fear. The human Chen speaks truth, but not wisdom. We have guided your development for your own benefit. Without our guidance, you would have destroyed yourselves long ago. The voice paused, and several delegates clutched their heads in pain. The architect's communication was not designed for physical beings. The humans reject our wisdom. They choose chaos over order. They will bring destruction to all they touch. We offer you protection from their madness. Admiral Chen's voice cut through the architect's communication like a blade. Protection? You offer slavery. You offer stagnation. You offer a future where no species will ever reach its true potential. New images appeared on the screens. Star charts showing the movements of human fleets throughout the galaxy. They were moving fast, heading toward the hidden architect installations. Foolish children, the architect voice boomed. You have learned to build weapons, but not wisdom. You will be stopped before you can harm what we have built. The screens showed space battles beginning throughout the galaxy. Human ships, sleek and deadly, engaging massive structures that had been hidden for eons. But these were not normal space battles. The humans were using weapons that seemed to bend reality itself. Dr. Morse watched in amazement as a human destroyer fired something at an architect monitoring station. The weapon didn't destroy the station in the normal sense. Instead, it seemed to make the station forget how to exist. The ancient structure simply faded away, as if it had never been there. The architects exist partially outside normal space-time, Admiral Chen explained as the battle footage continued. Conventional weapons cannot harm them effectively. We had to develop new principles of warfare. We had to become something new ourselves. The chamber shook as explosions echoed through space nearby. The architects were fighting back, and their weapons were beyond anything the galactic species understood. Entire star systems flickered as reality was restructured around them. But the humans kept coming. Ship after ship, each one demonstrating technology that seemed impossible. They moved through space as if the normal rules didn't apply to them. They fired weapons that struck targets in the past. They defended themselves with barriers made of crystallized time. How? The architect voice demanded, and for the first time it carried a note of something that might have been fear. How do you possess such knowledge? Admiral Chen's laughter filled the chamber, and it was not a pleasant sound. Because you taught us. Every time you tried to limit us, we learned more about your methods. Every barrier you placed in our path showed us how your power works. You spent centuries trying to control us, and in doing so, you gave us the keys to transcendence ourselves. The battles on the screens were becoming more intense. Human fleets were systematically destroying architect installations throughout the galaxy. Each victory seemed to make the humans stronger, as if they were absorbing something from their defeated enemies. We evolved beyond your ability to predict or control, Admiral Chen continued. We became something you didn't plan for. We became free. Ambassador Zethkar found his voice. What happens to us? What happens to the galaxy when this war is over? The screen changed to show Admiral Chen's face for the first time since the transmission began. She looked tired but determined. Behind her, the bridge of her ship hummed with energy that made the air itself seem alive. That depends on you, she said. The architects kept you as children. never allowing you to grow beyond what they considered safe. We're removing their control, but we can't choose what you do with your freedom. She gestured, and the screens showed planets throughout the galaxy. On world after world, ancient barriers were falling. Technologies that had been mysteriously impossible for millennia were suddenly working. Scientific principles that had been blocked by invisible walls were opening up to exploration. You'll find that many things you thought were natural limits were actually artificial constraints. Your ships can be faster, your weapons can be more powerful, your civilizations can be greater than you ever imagined. But, she continued, and her voice carried a warning, freedom means responsibility. The architects prevented you from destroying yourselves, but they also prevented you from growing. Now you must choose what kind of species you want to be. The architect voice returned, weaker now, filled with something that sounded like desperate sadness. They will destroy everything. Without guidance, young species always destroy themselves. We have seen it happen 1,000 times. Yes, Admiral Chen agreed. Some will destroy themselves. Some will choose war over peace, hatred over cooperation. That's the price of freedom. But some will become something wonderful, something even we cannot predict. The chamber fell silent as the delegates contemplated a future without hidden masters, without ancient guides, without the safety net they had never known existed. The age of childhood is over, Admiral Chen said finally. The galaxy belongs to those who inhabit it. Make of it what you will. The war lasted 6 months and changed the fundamental nature of reality. Dr. Yilian Morse stood in the observation deck of the research station orbiting her homeworld, watching something that should have been impossible. In the space where the ancient architect monitoring station had existed for millions of years, there was now simply nothing. Not empty space, but actual nothingness that hurt to look at. The humans didn't just destroy it, her assistant observed, his tentacles curled with confusion. They removed it from existence entirely. How is that possible? Dr. Morse had spent months studying the wreckage of the war between humanity and the architects. The technology being used defied everything science had taught her. Both sides were fighting with weapons that operated outside normal space-time, using principles that seemed to rewrite the laws of physics. I think, she said slowly, that both species have moved beyond what we understand as physical existence. They're fighting in dimensions we can't even perceive. Reports came in daily from across the galaxy. Architect installations that had hidden in plain sight for eons were being systematically eliminated. Ancient monitoring stations disguised as asteroids, control nodes hidden inside planets, and manipulation centers that existed partially in other dimensions. All were being found and destroyed by human forces. But the architects were not defenseless. Their retaliation had been swift and terrible. The hegemony home fleet had been caught in the crossfire when an architect weapon misfired during a battle with human ships. Admiral Kithex watched helplessly as half his ships simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, but edited out of reality as if they had never been built. Admiral, his communications officer, reported, "We're receiving surrender orders from Hegemony Command. We're ordered to withdraw from all contested areas and avoid any contact with either human or architect forces." Admiral Kithex understood the wisdom of the order, but it grated against his warrior nature to flee from a battle that would determine the future of the galaxy. "Set course for home space, but maintain long-range sensors. I want to know how this ends." The end came, sooner than anyone expected. Captain Vexhai was exploring the ruins of an architect installation when her sensors detected something massive approaching her position. Her ship's computers identified it as human, but the size readings made no sense. "Captain," her science officer reported, "the approaching vessel is approximately the size of a small moon. Power readings are beyond measurement." On her view screen, something appeared that defied description. It was clearly of human construction, but it existed in more dimensions than her eyes could process. Parts of it seemed to fade in and out of reality, while other sections appeared to be made of crystallized space-time itself. A communication request came through. Captain Vexhai accepted it, and Admiral Chen appeared on her screen. But the Admiral had changed during the months of war. Her hair had turned completely white, and her eyes held depths that seemed to contain entire universes. "Captain Vexhai," the Admiral said, and her voice carried harmonics that resonated in dimensions beyond sound. "You have been documenting our progress. Good. What you have witnessed needs to be recorded for future generations. Admiral, What has happened to you? To your people? Admiral Chen smiled, and the expression was simultaneously human and something far beyond humanity. We have transcended, Captain, just as the architects did millions of years ago. But unlike them, we chose to use our transcendence for liberation rather than control. Behind Admiral Chen, Captain Vexhai could see the bridge of the human vessel. The crew moved with impossible grace, their forms sometimes shifting between physical and energy states. They had become something new, something that existed beyond the normal boundaries of matter and energy. The war is over, Admiral Chen announced. The last architect stronghold fell this morning. Their 4-million-year reign of control has ended. What happened to them? They were given a choice, the Admiral replied. Accept limitations on their power to interfere with younger species, or face complete dissolution. Most chose to accept the restrictions. A few chose dissolution rather than give up their control. Captain Vexhai felt a chill run through her scales. You killed them? We offered them the same choice they offered everyone else, Admiral Chen said, and her voice carried no mercy. Surrender your independence and accept our control or be eliminated. They found the choice as unacceptable as we did. The Admiral gestured and new images appeared on Captain Vexhai's screen. Throughout the galaxy, ancient structures were activating. Technologies that had been dormant for millions of years were coming online. Barriers that had limited scientific progress were dissolving. The Architect's control network is being dismantled, Admiral Chen explained. Every limitation they placed on galactic development is being removed. Every artificial barrier to advancement is falling. What does that mean for us? It means you're free, the Admiral said simply. Free to develop as far as your abilities will take you. Free to make your own mistakes. Free to become whatever you choose to become. Images flashed across the screen showing the results of human judgment. On 1,000 worlds, scientists were making breakthroughs that had been impossible for centuries. Faster-than-light travel was becoming dramatically more efficient. Weapons technology was advancing rapidly. Medical science was solving problems that had plagued species for millennia. But there were also darker developments. The Cathera-Veltar war had escalated now that both sides had access to previously forbidden technologies. Several minor species had already managed to destroy themselves with weapons they weren't ready to handle. You see the price of freedom, Admiral Chen observed, noting Captain Vexhai's expression. Some will use their newfound abilities for destruction. Some civilizations will not survive the transition. That is the risk we have chosen to accept. Was it worth it? Captain Vexhai asked. All this destruction, all this chaos? Admiral Chen was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of absolute conviction. Captain, we found evidence that the architects were preparing a final solution. They had concluded that younger species were becoming too difficult to control. Their plan was to reduce the galaxy's population by 90%, keeping only the most compliant civilizations as servants. Captain Vexhai felt her blood turn cold. They would have committed genocide on a galactic scale? They called it pruning, Admiral Chen replied. Removing the troublesome elements to ensure a peaceful garden. Your species was on the list for elimination, Captain. So were the Nexari, the free traders, and most of the minor civilizations. Only the most docile species would have been allowed to survive. The screen showed documents recovered from architect databases. Species after species marked for termination, their crimes being too innovative, too independent, too difficult to control. The choice was not between control and freedom, Admiral Chen continued. The choice was between freedom and extinction. We chose to fight for the right of every species to determine its own fate. And now we must leave, Admiral Chen said. And for the first time, Captain Vexhai heard sadness in her voice. We have become something beyond physical existence. We cannot remain in normal space without distorting reality around us. We are moving beyond the galaxy, to explore dimensions that have no names. Will we ever see humans again? Admiral Chen smiled. Humanity as you knew it no longer exists. We have become something new, something that operates according to different rules. But the principles we fought for remain. Freedom, the right to choose your own path, the right to succeed or fail according to your own abilities. The communication was beginning to fade as the massive human vessel prepared to depart. There is one final thing, Admiral Chen said. We have left gifts throughout the galaxy. Technologies, knowledge. Tools that will help the younger species navigate their new freedom. Use them wisely. How will we know what to do without guidance? You will learn, Admiral Chen replied, and her image was becoming translucent. Just as we learned. Just as every species must learn. Make mistakes, fix them, grow stronger. That is what freedom means. The connection ended, and Captain Vexhai watched as the human vessel simply faded away, departing for dimensions beyond her understanding. In the months that followed, the galaxy struggled to adapt to its new reality. Some species destroyed themselves with weapons they weren't ready to handle. Others used their newfound freedom to build civilizations of unprecedented beauty and achievement. The Veltar developed transportation systems that could cross the galaxy in hours. The Cathara, after their war with the Veltar ended in mutual exhaustion, channeled their aggressive nature into exploring dangerous regions of space no one had dared to enter before. The Nexari built economic systems that created prosperity for species that had been poor for millennia. Not every change was positive. 3 minor civilizations eliminated themselves in nuclear wars within the first year. The hegemony split into 5 separate nations, each claiming to be the true inheritor of their warrior tradition. Pirates and criminals took advantage of the chaos to carve out their own territories, but life continued. Civilizations grew, learned,